All right, we're live. Woo! Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Annie Brock, and I am really excited because I am here tonight with Jane Babcock. She is an experienced veteran service officer, retired from that technically, but she's still working it full time. She's just not getting a paycheck for it anymore. And she has graciously agreed to share some time with our Leader Transition Institute tribe and whoever else is listening every other month on the first Tuesday evening. And so I am grateful, Jane, for your spending a little bit of time with us. And of course, before we got going tonight, I asked Jane, is there anything new that we should talk about? And she said there are a lot of little quirks in the VA healthcare system that deserve some attention. So that's where we're going to spend the bulk of our time tonight. But if you have a question, please put it in the chat, whether you are on YouTube or whether you're watching us on Twitter or whether you're watching us on Facebook. So thanks for being here tonight. And Jane, let's just jump right into it. Welcome and let's talk VA benefits.
Hello, everyone. Yep, VA healthcare. It can be the greatest thing as far as VA and care goes. A lot of folks, especially some of our younger guys, they come home and they go, oh, don't worry about it. I'm not going to enroll in VA healthcare. The other guy needs it more than I do. Or I'm going back to my old job and the insurance will kick in and things like that. And that's not the way you should look at it. You need to look at it as your safety net. You need to get enrolled. If you're in a particular category of veteran, you want to go at least once a year and participate in their research. Do your physical. Let them check your blood for new things that may be coming out on a presumptive list based on where you served and when you served. So it's real important. I had a young man that didn't want to enroll in VA healthcare when he first came back, going back to the job kind of thing. But a year and a half, little less than a year and a half later, his family called me. He was just starting a new job, and a guy pulled out of his driveway without looking, and my guy was on a motorcycle. Needless to say, it could have been drowning in medical bills. But instead, because he was within that 18-month window of applying, and the fact that it was a traumatic injury, the VA will waive all the other requirements and go ahead and they took care of all of his medical bills. He was 3 months in that hospital in the ICU.
Wow, that could have broken his family.
Oh, yeah. So when he got strong enough, they said, okay, we'll send an ambulance. We'll transport him down to our spinal center in Milwaukee. And he spent 6 months down there, and he didn't have a single hospital bill, even though it wasn't service related. So it is your financial safety net in the traumatic injury type situation.
That's amazing.
So get in there, participate, go once a year, let them test you and look at things. They're going to look for the weird things like ALS. Are you having any symptoms? Because it is a presumptive for all military all the time, no matter when and where you served. These are the kind of things you need to have watched more closely.
So even if you've been out for 10 or 15 years, you should still just go in, get yourself in the system and get checked out. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And if you haven't sat down with a veteran service officer, and over 30 states have them in their county, they're employed by your county or they're employed by their organization. So check with your county, check with your state, see who's the nearest to you. Go to them, sit down, learn all about VA, make sure you're enrolled in VA healthcare. If you happen to be one of the fortunate ones that had no service-related injury or illness, which there are very few, then they are going to look at your finances. And that's okay, because when you retire, your finances are going to change. When you lose a job, you can request a waiver to get in. If you're unemployed for a while, they're going to say, hey, yeah, we'll bring you in with the understanding that if you happen to gain insurance later and you're making $100,000 a year and you have no service-related injuries, you really kind of end up at the back of the line anyway. So if you don't mind, step aside and let the injured guys take the care. Mm-hmm. So always. And Most people that have been denied based on income in 2003, when they started doing this, at that time, they counted your assets. They stopped counting assets years ago. But
Interesting.
guys haven't come back and applied. And maybe they were denied based on the big fancy house or the farm or the something like that. And now it's changed. So maybe now your income minus your medical expenses, that includes your insurance premiums for health and cancer insurance and assisted living insurance and anything else like that, plus your all your regular medical expenses may not qualify you to get in.
Wow, and that might make a really different, a really positive difference for some of our older family members who are struggling with healthcare. Because I remember, and actually, there are probably some older gentlemen out there who are like my father was. My father actually paid for healthcare through the VA because he had TRICARE for life, but he paid for healthcare at the VA because he wanted to go to a military affiliated doctor, and where he lived, that was as close as it got. And I bet there are some other older veterans out there just like him. But now they probably wouldn't have to actually pay out of pocket because
Right.
assets are not considered.
Right. And when you think about it, a lot of our older guys, and including the 56-year-old woman veteran, don't realize we've got hearing loss. I went to a civilian doctor first, had my hearing test, and I thought, oh, they're just trying to push those $5,000 hearing aids on me. Went to the VA, and as soon as I stepped out of the booth, the VA doctor looked at me and she goes, "You'd really benefit from hearing aids." So for me, $50 to get the hearing test, $50 to get the hearing aids, a lot better than that $5,000 or $6,000. And even if you're an older veteran who simply needs to get hearing aids, you could request an appointment just for that, no matter how much you make, because we understand, the VA understands, that if you don't hear that siren running up behind you, or you don't hear that small child screaming because they got their fingers caught in the door, so the VA will make exceptions for urgent medical need.
And that's really important. And it's not just because of those things. I think it's also because of the fact that they have learned over time that hearing loss is related to dementia. And the more poorly you hear, the more trouble, the less your brain functions.
Mm-hmm.
Because it needs the sounds that come in through your ears, it needs to be able to process that. So if your hearing apparatus isn't processing sounds, then your brain slows down. And so that helps to drive down overall medical care if we can keep our veterans healthy,
Oh,
their
definitely.
brains healthy.
Yep. And if a veteran, say he's earning a lot of money and has outside insurance and all that other kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden gets diagnosed with something traumatic, the VA again will look at, is this life threatening? If it is, they will waive and bring that veteran in. Because especially since, unfortunately, in certain age groups, there's a lot of cancers. So, and a lot of other diseases. Like I said, ALS is presumptive for all of us. If you get a diagnosis of ALS and you make $250,000 a year, the VA doesn't care. They want to
Well, I
provide
had
you
no
that free
idea.
health care.
Wow, I had no idea that it was presumptive for all of us. I thought there was a certain group of veterans that it was presumptive for. That's
Nope.
interesting.
And there's other things, odd little things in healthcare. MS. If you get diagnosed within the first 7 years of leaving service, odds are they're going to be able to chase it back and determine that you may have already had the symptoms in service.
Wow.
So it's one of those diseases that starts so minutely in the body. And by the time it gets to the point where they can actually diagnose this. So if you are experiencing MS, or you have a veteran that is, and they've been out of service less than 7 years, you need to get into the VA.
Wow, that's really important. And so it's not a fail on our part when we're going to the VA. That's really something that's proactive. It's
Right.
time to get ourselves taken care of.
Yes. Yes. And unfortunately, even the VA within itself, within its staff, because they do change positions a lot, they do move in for a few years, internships and things like that, and then move on to a different hospital or whatever. They don't get the training that they should.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some answers to that. I mean, it automatically should be somewhere in their software that if they put in a diagnosis of MS, that alert should pop up and say something to them. Or a 68-year-old veteran who has Vietnam in his record, when they diagnose ischemic heart disease, I wish their software would alert that intern to, hey, you need to question this veteran. Were you in Vietnam? Were you blue water? Were you in certain Air Force bases in Thailand on the DMZ during a couple of years when they used it? If so, go see your VSO and get this filed.
Is there any time limit on when it can be filed?
No. So I've had people that, I had a veteran that came to me, his wife came to me, and he was on his third Vietnam cancer. He didn't know about the first two because a lot of times these things happen before they get put on the list. So like ALS has only been on the list 10 or 11 years, I think.
Right.
So if that veteran died 12 years ago, the widow may not know.
And can she go back and file?
She can file, but it's going to go from that day forward.
Right.
If she, yeah. So, but that's why
But
it's
for
so
a widow
important to
who's
know your
struggling,
VSO.
but for a widow who's struggling, every penny counts.
Oh, yes. And that $1,600 a month plus aid and attendance, if she needs it, can be very important. And it's tax-free money. So it's not going to put her into a taxable group if she's not in one already.
That's awesome. So that's really important. So people, pay if you are among those of us who being in the military is the family business. Think about whether your mom or your dad are getting their proper benefits or not just yourself, because we are of a certain age who need to look out for our seniors. And,
Yes.
and as we're learning these things for ourselves, we can pass it to our parents and to our friends and family members. And that great
Yes.
that wonderful uncle that served, or aunt.
Or that church member.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so important to know these things. And it's so important to visit with your CVSO, your tribal veteran service officer, your VSO. Again, these people are employed, most of them are veterans, and they have that sense of family. So they are trying their best to look out for you. So they want you to come in, even if all you do is call and check in every 5 years. Call and see what's new, what's been added, what's been changed, like the change of income and assets to just income. A lot of veterans qualified for VA healthcare once they dropped that asset thing. So,
So if you are a veteran married to I shouldn't, it has nothing to do with it. Is it joint assets, that joint income, or is it household income?
it's household as far as, if you're married, your spouse's income and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, but also your spouse's medical bills. So if your spouse
This
just
is
bought hearing aids
as
last year,
well.
guess what?
Okay.
So it works the same way because we're looking at the idea that the VA looks at the idea that your income minus your medical expenses is your living income. What are you living off of? Well, if you're living off of less than 130% of poverty, you need the VA.
Right.
You need that, even if it's just your safety net. And so go in, and if you're in the VA and you're using it and you're using their pharmacy, that's your Medicare Part D. If your income's low enough, you're getting all your meds free in the VA. Why go out and pay copays or other things?
We pay our taxes. We did our service.
That's right.
So I need
You
to.
offered your very lives to this nation, you know?
So what other little things have you been faced with lately that people have reached out to you about? Have there been any other curious questions?
Yes, Voc Rehab comes up quite often
Hmm.
because it comes up under the idea of entrepreneurship. A lot of young veterans, and even a lot of our guys that have gotten a little older, having lost their job through COVID or whatever, they're now saying, I think I can start a nonprofit, or I think I could maybe set up a barber shop or things like that. So they're starting to look at going into business for themselves.
Hmm.
Well, if you're a veteran and you have a service connected rating, one of the 5 tracks inside the vocational rehabilitation and employment program is entrepreneurship. It's how to set up a business, how to, what are the local resources that can help you, how to set up a business plan to approach the bank and things like that.
Hmm.
So that's another one that, most people don't realize it's there.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. So it's not just about learning, the voc rehab isn't about just learning a specific skill that you can then go get a job with. It's about creating your own business and employing other people.
Yes. And the idea that you can,
Uh-oh.
did you lose my audio for a second?
For a second, yes.
Okay. Okay. Unfortunately, my phone dropped, and when it did, it knocked me off for a second. But the vocational rehabilitation and employment program has 5 different lanes, and most people don't realize that. They think it's just to go to college, or just to, I'm a truck driver and I can't drive anymore because of my diabetes. It's service connected, so they're going to teach me another job. No, they have a program for the guys that are just coming back, maybe lost vision or now they're wheelchair bound. And so they teach them all the ways to survive, just to function in the day to
Mhm.
day basis. And then there's the program that sends them to college or tech school. And then there's a program where, okay, the guy comes back and he was already a computer guy, but he's wheelchair bound now. Okay, let's talk to his employer and see what we can do to set up an ergonomic desk situation for him.
Mhm.
Software like Dragon, so that will that work for him voice control wise. And so they'll do things with your employer. In some situations, they may even approach an employer and say, look, we're going to pay half the wages for a year to make sure that this veteran is going to be successful in that job, that he's got all the tools that he needs, and things like that. There's also a tax credit. Um, so there's that. There's also the entrepreneur program. And then there's just the um, rehabilitation part that provides for, like, if they are going to school through voc rehab, they can work part-time on certain jobs. I used to have a student that came to me and he worked part-time in my office and they paid him.
How
So
interesting.
yeah, so there's a lot of avenues, and it all starts with your health. What's your health status, and what part of it is service connected that's holding you back from being successful? Let's see what we can do to get you there.
It's health drives everything, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Everything.
Yeah, when I think back to it, we are just, we're at this 1 year point, and finding out how important our health is. And so, does it look like the VA is going to have programs to help people with as they're recovering for the long haul COVID survivors? Are they doing anything there that you've seen?
I haven't seen it or experienced it myself, but I do know that if you're in the VA healthcare system and you have that long haul side effects, that healthcare is just the same as it was before.
Okay.
They're just going to take care of you, whether you walked in and said, as a female veteran of the age of 27, and walked in and said, I'm pregnant. They're going to provide your prenatal care, and they're going to allow you to have your child at the VA hospital and stay so many days afterwards, and the well baby checkup and things like that. So it's it's good health care.
That's good. And
But
they are making quite an effort with women nowadays, aren't they?
yes, yes. In our particular hospital down in Milwaukee, they actually moved our women's clinic to a separate building so that there's no sense of fear for some of our MST survivors and things like that. So, some of those veterans are big, strong guys. They can be kind of scary. So, But, and the biggest thing I can say to people is, they'll say, well, I hear all these horror stories about VA. Yes, but that's our responsibility as veterans. When we are treated badly out in the civilian world, you complain to the boss. You ask for a different doctor. You do things like that. You need to do the same things in the VA. If you are not being treated properly, then you need to put it in black and white. You need to tell that person's boss and that person's boss, and then you need to send it out to Washington, D.C. So I had no problem with that. When guys would come and complain to me or, want to say things about their care, whether it was a front desk worker or whether it was a doctor, put it in black and white, sign it, date it, put your contact information on it. And then I would turn around and scan it and send it off to the head of the clinic, the head of the hospital, the head of the vision, which is the regional office. Mm-hmm. And then I'd send it out to Washington. More than one of my guys got calls from Washington. Tell me a little bit more about this.
Right.
And we did have staff members removed, and one of them was actually fired. A doctor was relieved of his duties within the VA.
Awesome.
So don't let it happen.
Yeah, I'm glad that you've encouraged people to do that. It's really important. We have a little bit of a tendency, I think, sometimes in the military just to keep our mouths shut, put our heads down, and press forward. But there is a time when we have to stand up for ourselves. So, Jane, Jose put on Facebook, he said, this is great information, which is wonderful. And I agree. And he says, with the vocational rehab program, is there some sort of stipend for living expenses while training like the GI Bill has?
Yes. There's a stipend, just like the GI Bill, because obviously they want you to concentrate on your studies and be successful. And then there's also the work program that I was talking about where you could work part-time in certain situations. All I had to do was report the hours he worked, fax them in every week, and they added to his income.
Wow, that's awesome. That's right. And that's a great way of giving somebody experience and then getting help in your business. So
yes.
I might have to check that out for LTI.
There you go.
To see how we can get a veteran, on their feet as they, if they need it, and give them some experience and get the help that we need to. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yep. So those of you who are out there, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. And while we're waiting to do that, Jane, I know that you have something new going on. You have starting on the 16th. There's a new podcast that you're a part of. Tell us about that.
Yes, CBS Audio. It was part of CBS and then became part of Entercom and then now is a part of Audacity. But CBS Audio is a whole bunch of podcasts. And one of them in particular is Eye on Veterans. It is presented by Phil Briggs. He's a Navy veteran, and he's been doing this for a couple of years now. And he invited me to come and talk about VA. Great thing about it is I love the internet. It's great as far as this goes. But as you and I mentioned, that older generation, they're not going to see this. They're going to have to rely on that younger generation seeing it and bringing it to them. This is going to allow me to move off the internet at the same time. The podcast will be there, but he has 250 plus radio stations that he works with. Some of them run the entire podcast as a show, and others run pieces of it broken down into PSAs. But it also runs on the Armed Forces Network. So I'm reaching some of those soldiers that aren't, because of duty status or whatever, not able to spend a lot of time on the net.
So tell me what link do I put in our up on a banner? Where do I find that? Is it the Connecting Vets?
Yep.
Okay, here. So I am going to put a link up on as a banner. Here we go.
So this is my first move off the internet, and this is part of my big desire is getting to the older generation, the non-tech generation, the extremely rural veteran that may not even have access.
Right.
And if you think a homeless guy is going to be on the internet, you're wrong. So VA, you need to get off the internet.
Right. Well, so for those of you listening who have older parents who are or older relatives who are not on the internet but need to get some information about the VA, copy this link, take a picture of the screen so that you can share this link with your family members, friends, fellow church members, community members, maybe even your neighbor, and they can get some updated information on the radio. How wonderful. So we do have another question, Jane, on
Sure.
Facebook from Margie Jimenez. She says she's getting ready to retire in 1 to 2 years without a disability rating, is what she expects. Will she still be able to use VA medical care?
Yes. Again, when you're first retiring, there's that 5-year window. They will also say to you, okay, you have TRICARE. Do you really need to be in the VA healthcare? So odds are, though, if you are retiring from service, your hearing from entry to exit has changed. You have more than likely have a hearing loss shift. It is like the veteran that serves for 4 years and gets cancer. He gets that cancer diagnosis shortly before leaving service. It happened in service. That's all that matters. So you need to go get your knees checked out real thoroughly because that's a very common issue, knees and ankles, hearing, vision, and back. If you've been deployed, you need to look at, okay, have I had any side effects from the shots? Did I get exposed to something like asbestos? Remember, our building codes are a lot different than what they are in the Middle East. They may still be using asbestos as far as I know. But
Right.
if you were in an environment where they were, burning buildings or just, running through the rubble and things like that of old buildings, you may have been exposed. You may need to have a really good scan of your lungs if you're having any breathing problems. And if you are experiencing breathing problems and you did serve in the sandbox, you want to get those things annotated on your records. But I
But
also caution.
and thank you for saying that. But I'm going to say I'm going to do my foot stomp thing, and you know exactly what I'm going to say. Before you go have that VA physical, make sure that you have some kind of civilian life insurance policy put into place to make sure that you're covered so that you don't become uninsurable after you've had that physical. So it's very, what Jane is saying is 100%. Make sure you get all those extra scans that you should have depending on where you were deployed. If you were deployed, and most everybody that's on active duty nowadays has been deployed somewhere, not everybody, but most people have. But make sure that you have a civilian life insurance policy in place now. Then go make the appointment at once you have that in place. If you don't have it in place, you need to get it in place. And there are lots of places. The Army and Air Force Mutual Aid Association is a great place. The Navy, all of the different service organizations, they have insurance policies through them. There are just a wealth of places to look at where you can get inexpensive term life insurance policies to make sure that you're covered, and then go get all of the scans that Jane is talking about before you leave active duty. Now,
Yes.
Jane, if you go for your VA physical or your like your retirement physical, whatever it is, and if they don't suggest these things, can service members say, hey, what about doing this? I was in this place. Is that something that can be requested and the doctors know that people should get that?
Well, people don't know, and sometimes probably the doctors don't know, in that it's those quirky things. So, but you have to remember, you're in control of your health care, whether you're active duty or whether you're in the reserves, National Guard, or otherwise. So if you are and you really think it's you need to push. Don't let a doctor tell you no when you think you have a need. So, and it's like a back injury. Well, if you're having tingling in your leg or whatever, you need to say, this may be a soft tissue injury. I want that eliminated. I want that cause eliminated. I'm having breathing troubles. I want you to eliminate cancer so that I know what I have wrong with me. And that's usually, if you look at it from this perspective of, look, doc, we have a problem and you can't find a specific cause. We need to start eliminating other things that are more dramatic.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much. So I am going to put up the banner for our website, the Leader Transition Institute, and that's where you'll find out everything about what we do at LTI as far as all our programs, changing focus, moving from we to me. Jane is going to be back with us again on June 8th. And in the meantime, on the weekends, you can catch her on the radio. I'm really excited about that. So thank you, Jane, so much for being on with us tonight. I really appreciate your sharing your time, your knowledge, and experience with us. We are all the better for it.
Thank you, Annie. And I'll see you guys on LinkedIn and Clubhouse. So other places where we can interact.
I know I closed us out, but just let's take 1 second. So you're on Clubhouse?
Yes. Yeah, I'm in a lot of the military rooms.
Okay, do you
I'm there every Friday night. No, Jay Salter has asked me to be on his panel. So every Friday night, I'm on there, 7:30 Central Time.
What's the name of the room?
The Mill Pack.
Millpack. Okay, great. So that's a lot of places, and it's really important. That's part of what we do at LTI is to make sure that our tribe has access to resources. So you can find Jane on the radio, you can find her on Twitter, you can find her on LinkedIn, you can find her on Clubhouse. Ask your questions and get yourself taken care of. You've served well, and you deserve to be taken care of well.
Yes. God bless you all. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.